Hello, AP students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 9, Psychological Development, Part 9, the final part. And we're going to get into talking about adulthood and aging into our elderly years. So, the developmental changes of adulthood. Sigmund Freud believed that adult development was driven by two needs, that of love and work. Abraham Maslow described these needs as love and belonging, which when satisfied, allows for the emergence of esteem and self-actualization or fulfillment. Other theorists divided the basic needs of adulthood into affiliation or social acceptance, achievement or competence, and finally, power needs. Erickson, his theory basically talked about early into middle adult years, focusing on needs for intimacy, and later on in life, this idea of generosity. So let's talk about Erickson. Intimacy versus isolation. Talking about our kind of adult years, young into our middle adult years, from roughly ages 21 through 39. This is when we have the challenge of establishing close relationships with other adults. Intimacy is a part of that, and that is the capacity to make a full commitment, be it sexually, emotionally, and morally, to another person. So, intimacy is not necessarily purely from a sexual point of view, it is actually from developing deep friendships with other people as well. So individuals must resolve the conflict between wanting to establish closeness to another or fearing the vulnerability and the risk that closeness can bring. And making intimate commitments requires compromising personal preferences, accepting responsibility, yielding some of your privacy and independence to receive the reward of closeness. Failure to resolve this crisis can lead to things like isolation or the inability to connect with others. To resolve this crisis, one must have a clear sense of identity, and that's formed in our previous stage as we're kind of going through adolescence, being able to know who you are and what you are before you can actually come to love someone and to share your life with them. So, Erickson's generosity and stagnation, this is kind of going into our middle to late adulthood years. And this is talking about the process of making a commitment beyond oneself to your family, to your work, to your society, or to future generations. And in this stage, the majority of our opportunities for growth lies in the path to generosity during adulthood slash midlife. And generosity, for the most part, involves a commitment to make a contribution to family, work, society, and future generations. Adults who have a strong sense of generosity and productivity report a high level of satisfaction or happiness in life. And those who have not resolved these earlier crises of identity and intimacy may experience a midlife crisis, which can happen from maybe what they thought were deeply committed relationships falling apart to having a career change, all these kind of things happening kind of in your adult years when things probably should be a little more stable as far as relationships and job issues are concerned. New perspectives on men, women, work, and family. Today, most people come from a dual career household where both men and women are working. There are more women who are professionals and they're less likely to define themselves solely as a wife or a mother. Men no longer define themselves as workers and family providers, and we do have a number of men who are actually stay-at-home fathers. Our population is becoming older as we live longer, and at the beginning of the 20th century, only about 3% of the population was actually over the age of 65. That is a very small number. Compared today, at least 13%, and that's growing, is over the age of 65. Erickson's ego, integrity, and despair. This is our golden years, 65 and up. Uh, this is where we see an increased awareness of our own mortality and the changes in our body, behavior, social roles that will be set for the stage of late adulthood. Sometimes this comes when our own parents pass away, and you kind of start thinking about that, you might be the last generation that's around. Ego, integrity, and healthy end of a long life, and looking back on one's life without having any regrets, and to enjoy a sense of wholeness. That's really one of the biggest goals that we're trying to obtain. Those who are experiencing a crisis may experience futility, which is basically it's pointless, life is pointless, despair, or self-deprecation, putting themselves down, kind of a why me kind of mentality. Some new perspectives on aging. Aging no longer is synonymous with a decline. Some memory skills and memory aspects actually improve with age. Wisdom is cultivated. So the mind remains open. As long as the mind remains open and active, um, in old age, people may lose some of their energy reserves, but they may gain the ability to control emotions, and thereby able to conserve some of their energy. As far as the physical side, our skin, for the most part, begins to wrinkle, our hair thins, it's going to turn gray. Our height may actually decrease by an inch or two as we get older. Our vision starts taking a hit. Our lenses become discolored. Sometimes that's part of developing cataracts. It's less flexible as far as affecting both color, vision, and distance. And hence, a lot of people are having to wear corrective lenses when they get older if they have never worn them before. Hearing becomes diminished after the age of 60, especially our ability to hear high frequency sounds. Um, Cognition, certain parts of the frontal lobe lose mass as we age. But there's little evidence that this is going to cause any problems with, mental decline. Older people acquire information slowly, especially when they get into their 70s and 80s. Many older people begin to show some kind of decline in their cognitive abilities, so it takes them longer to problem solve, and it might take them longer to find the right words that they're looking for as far as what they want to say. Brain imaging suggests that the brains of older people may actually compensate by processing information differently and bringing more regions of the brain into play. With moderate exercise, an older adult may forestall some of the and even improve some of their mental abilities. So again, staying active is kind of a key to living a long life. Vocabulary and social skills are consistently better in older adults, and part of that is because you've used them for years. Memory is not as good as it once was, but many older adults still have the ability to access knowledge and events that occurred long ago or years ago. As for new acquaintances, they may have to ask their names once or twice. Alzheimer's disease is a degenerative brain disease, usually noticed first by the debilitating effects on memory, but it also produces both diminished thinking abilities and memory problems. Early signs include things like memory problems, anxiety related to the difficulty of recalling names. They're finding out a lot of new things about Alzheimer's, and there's even some talk about individual sleep patterns and whether or not that might be a precursor to the disease's onset. Socially, many seniors outlive their friends and family. They may experience reduced mobility and may have to become less socially active as a result of those kind of things. Maintaining at least a single intimate relationship can improve personal health as long as living with a pet. That can also help some of our seniors as far as kind of staying mentally fit as well. And selective social interaction. This is something that does occur with aging. This is when older people choose to restrict the number of social contacts that they have to those that are the most gratifying. And in a way, they might kind of allow some friendships to kind of fade off if they are not necessarily ones that are providing them satisfaction. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she came up with the 5 stages of death and dying. This goes back to about 1969. And we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some criticisms here, but um, supposedly, according to Kubler-Ross, is that you have to go through these steps in this order. And the first step is denial. This is refusing to believe that an individual is sick. Anger, that will come shortly after that when you display um, that anger that you're upset, and you might say things like, why me? The bargaining aspect, making a deal, in return for a cure, they're going to try to fulfill some kind of promise, like, I will try to be a better person. Depression, this ability of losing sleep, loss of appetite, and such. And finally, acceptance, where they realize that death is inevitable and they accept their fate. It was initially thought that you would have to go through these steps in order. Later, Kubler-Ross came to assert that each individual experiences these stages differently according to his or her own experiences. And to kind of take a look at this, these are the kind of the steps here: the shock, denial, the anger, the depression or detachment, the bargaining, and then finally the acceptance. Thank you very much.